My friend Udar asked the mother, we want to make a good swimming pool in this ground, and we do not know where to find the water. So we are trying to examine, investigate. But then he said, but mother, you know everything, you tell me where to find the water in this vast sports ground. And she said, the place where I am standing now has water beneath it. You dig here, you will find the water. It was a spontaneous answer. It was no question of finding out and investigating, and it was not a movement of movement of investigation and finding out by eliminating error. It's an automatic process of knowledge of the truth. Now, what was in the mother's consciousness, according to the mother and Sri Aurobindo, the supramental being will have that automatic knowledge in regard to everything. And it is in that process of knowledge, when that knowledge begins to manifest, there is a complete identity between knowledge and will. And knowledge being comprehensive, will also be comprehensive. And that knowledge will be so particularized whenever necessary for anything, it will harmonize everything automatically. And therefore, it will be capable of establishing a harmony automatically, without effort. So, when Sri Aurobindo speaks of life divine is a life which will be guided by this divine consciousness, by supramental consciousness, in which there will be automatic harmony, and each element is put into proper relationship with everything else. Where harmony is not immediately realizable, it will know also, it will take time for ripening that harmony. It will not hasten up either. It will have the right steps of harmonizing. It will not be like many peacemakers in the world who, even when peace is not possible in a given situation, they'll rush to make peace without ripening the situation. They will know exactly how to ripen the conditions, when to ripen, the methods by which you can ripen, how to bring about all the elements together and to bring about a total harmony. That is one of the visions of the divine life. And Sri Aurobindo says that is the end towards which we are moving today. All human evolution today has reached a point, a critical point, and it will end in this particular form. The whole book is written to prove that this is what we are at present working at. Now, having done this we are now to the last paragraph. Now, last paragraph is a kind of a summing up. Now, in this summing up, Sri Aurobindo says that there are today a large movements of thought. In fact, many movements of thought became ripened after the book was written. But Sri Aurobindo anticipates and says there are large movements of thought movements. And the one general characteristic of these movements of thought is that each one of them professes to inquire. Each one of them says we must inquire. There is a great movement towards inquiry. And yet, these movements at a critical point says we should not inquire. These movements profess to inquire but refuse to inquire. And this is a very important characteristic of the present movements of thought. It's very significant that today we are confronted with this kind of movement of thought in the world history. And there are plenty of thought movements of this kind, but they all agree on this. We must all inquire, but we should refuse to inquire. We should profess we must inquire, and yet they say we should not inquire. Refusal to inquire. I'll read out to you two paragraphs from two philosophers, one Western, one Indian, where this tendency is very clear. One is Bertrand Russell, who is very well known in India. I take Bertrand Russell because among many Western philosophers of today, Russell is more well known. So I'll take up his argument and state his statement exactly to illustrate, who says we must inquire and then say we must refuse to inquire. It may seem so strange, but it is a fact. As you know, Bertrand Russell is very famous for his development of a new school of thought. I cannot say he's the founder of a new school of thought. Basically, he's a mathematician, and he has given a new lead in the development of what is called symbolic logic. It's a new term which has come during the last 100 years, symbolic logic. As you know, the history of logic is a very ancient one. And Greeks and Nyayikas, in India, Nyayikas were logicians, the philosophers of Nyaya. And in the West, logic came to a very important climax with Aristotle. Aristotle is supposed to have given a most complete system of logic. And this logical system was never questioned right from Aristotle up to the time of Leibniz. Even Leibniz did not question Aristotle, he modified a little. It is only when in the recent times, towards the end of the 19th and the beginning of 20th century, that Aristotle came to be questioned. And one of the leaders of this questioning was Bertrand Russell. And he believes that Aristotle was muddle-headed thinker. There was muddle-headed thinking. I mean, it's a very strident criticism of such a great philosopher like Aristotle. And that is how you can see that he said we should break all that is established and which is famous for its own strident claims, because they have blocked our methods of inquiry. So we must have now new methods of inquiry, and we must inquire, we must question, we must inquire. So naturally we expect that if this is the strident movement of such a great thinker who wants to inquire, we must see in him a tremendous striving for inquiry. Now, towards the end of his whole movement of inquiry, he says there are very important questions which philosophy raises. What is man? What is the meaning of life? What should be achieved? What should we strive for? What's our destiny towards which we should drive ourselves? These are very important questions, and we are required to answer these questions whether you like it or not. Now his admission of these questions is wonderful. He said these questions are very important. But having raised these questions, he says, but these questions can never be answered. This is the state. These questions can never be answered. Why? Because human intellect is incapable of answering these questions. Human mind, you examine the human mind and you find human mind is incapable of answering these questions. So if you are now inquiring, you must ask a further question that if human mind is not capable, why don't you grow new faculties, develop through new faculties? Why don't you take recourse to those people who say that intellect can be surpassed? So he says, we refuse to believe that such faculties exist. It's an outright statement. We refuse to believe that there are other faculties beyond intellect. Now if you ask the question, how did you find out that such faculties don't exist? His answer is, they don't exist. We refuse to believe. I'll read out to you a statement from him just to make us sure that such a great thinker who wants to stride into inquiry and wants to make all the time greatest inquiry, how is it that he ultimately says, we refuse to inquire? He speaks on his own behalf and his colleagues, because as I said, he established a new school of thought, which is called the School of Logical Analysis. So he says, he and all his colleagues, they confess frankly that the human intellect is unable to find conclusive answers to many questions of profound importance to mankind. But they refuse to believe that there is some higher way of knowing by which we can discover truths hidden from science and the intellect. This is his statement. They refuse to believe that there are any other methods. Now, in the same way, this is one very important example known to all of us because Russell is very well known. But there are many other movements today which exactly say the same thing in substance. There is, for example, phenomenology, a philosophy of phenomenology. This is one of the modern movements. It says what we can analyze in the world is phenomena. All these facts which are there, we can analyze them quite easily. In the past, these phenomena have been interpreted in terms of their essential significance, from the point of view of essentiality. According to phenomenology, they have all failed. Therefore, they say that we should now limit ourselves only to analysis of phenomena, and when you come to essences, you should bracket them. Bracket them means put them aside. Don't raise those questions. When you come to essences, you just bracket them and go ahead only with phenomena. So this is also a refusal to inquire into essence. Then there is a philosophy which became very famous towards the first quarter of the last century, 20th century. By 1925, it is called absolute idealism. At the time of Hegel, it became very powerful. It came to a concluding climax in the philosophy of Bradley. He wrote a book called Appearance and Reality. And he said that human being, because he is a finite, it is impossible for the finite to become infinite. Because he is finite, therefore he can never be infinite. Therefore, any claim for a finite to know the whole is impossible. So it follows that no human being should strive to know the whole. It's impossible. And every individual should strive to remain within the limits of his finitude. He wrote an essay called Man's Station and Its Duties. Every man should find out his station, a limited station, and determine his own duties in relation to the others, and that is the highest that man can do. Nothing more than that. Man is a small cog into the vast machine of the universe, and he should accept that finitude because he cannot be more than that. He is finite. And he should accept all the time what the infinite demands from him. That is to say, without questioning, a larger group, whatever is demanded by the larger group, he should give in. In other words, an individual cannot know. We should inquire, but we should refuse to inquire. You cannot know. Now another development started which is called existentialism. According to existentialism, individual should not be reduced to a finite position. Even if he is finite, his utmost of finitude should be allowed to expand. Every individual has a right to feel his deepest depths. And when you come to the deepest depths, what do you find? There are different answers. What do you find when you go to the deepest depths? Therefore, in existentialism, there are 2-3 answers, alternative answers. One is, you find an eternal, inextinguishable angst.